Hello everyone and welcome. I have had so many of you ask if I have a tutorial on how to make a swoosh. Well, today, that answer is yes. Let's get into it. I've given this video a lot of thought and I'm not exactly sure how to teach you how to make a swoosh. The best thing I know to do is to get out one of my design practice sheets and show you, to really slow down the video and explain everything I've learned since I started dotting. I can fully remember looking these videos up myself on how to make a swoosh and what is a swoosh and what's a swipe and what's a comma stroke and so many questions. The best thing I know to do is make a video like I wanted to see back when I was starting. So if you're just starting out, this is going to hopefully be a great video for you. If you're a professional dotter, a longtime pro, maybe you'll pick up a few hints and tricks. Maybe you can leave me a few tricks in the comments down below and I'll learn something too. The first thing I want to go over is the basics. Let me show you what tools I use to make swooshes. As far as dotting tools go, I use styluses like these. This is what I refer to as a dotting tool. I love this little set. They are super inexpensive. I'm going to leave links to all the tools I use down below. They're also over on my website. I also use dotting rods, and these come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I totally recommend the ones from Happy Dotting Company. I have used them since the beginning and I absolutely love them. Sometimes I use them all together and have lots of fun making swooshes. All right, you guys, the next thing you need to know about making swooshes is going to be all about consistency, paint consistency. This may have been the very last key to my swoosh puzzle. It took me forever to figure out how much paint consistency really mattered. What you need to know is that every bottle of paint you buy is probably gonna be a little bit different from the last. It's almost as if every day the paint sits on the shelf, it changes just a little bit in consistency, getting drier and thicker over time. So for the purpose of this video, I am gonna open a hopefully brand new bottle of Deco Art Americana. When these paints are new, they are a wonderful consistency. The only trick is that we don't know how long it sat on the shelf before we got our hands on it. So far, I have had the best luck with paint consistency being consistent from Deco Art paints. That might be a good place for you to start. It looks like I scored a really fresh bottle of paint. This looks like the perfect consistency to do my swooshes. I want you to all describe in the comments the perfect paint consistency for you. The best description I've heard so far was a runny egg yolk. I think Kat said that one. I think that is the perfect description of something, universal that we all might know. So for me, I'm kind of looking for that really runny egg yolk. So let me get out my styluses, we'll dip it in the paint, and we'll make a few strokes. Let's see what this paint looks like and what our dotting styluses can do. This is a 2mm dotting tool. What that means is the little ball on the end is 2 millimeters in diameter. It is my favorite one, you guys. All right, let me zoom in a little bit and show you what I'm doing here. I dip my dotting tool into my paint, I bring it to the surface, and I gently place a dot. Then I'm dragging it over, but I'm barely putting any pressure on the surface. You just want to do it easy and slow. The faster you go, the shorter that swoosh is going to be. The slower you go, the longer that swoosh is going to be. It's another area you have to be consistent. Basically, if you go really fast, the paint doesn't have a whole lot of time to come off of that ball. If you go really slow, it does. Switching between the sizes of your dotting stylus, you'll find that the smaller ball obviously makes smaller swooshes and that the larger ones make larger swooshes. That's kind of a no-brainer. But that statement's only true if you're being consistent with the amount of paint you put on your tools, with the amount of pressure you apply to your surface, and the speed in which you're doing the swoosh. There's just so many variables that you have to tackle to dotting that makes it so much fun, and it always keeps it a challenge. No matter how long I've been doing this, I still struggle with slowing down and keeping the right pace and making everything consistent and doing things the same. I'm telling you, you can even mess up the consistency as your paint in your palette gets lower and lower and lower. There'll be less and less paint on your tool. I'm telling you, I find it fascinating and I enjoy the challenge so much of trying to figure it out. But the secret to it all is just consistency. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, JaDeL, I can't open a brand new bottle of paint every time I want the perfect swoosh. What do I do with my older, thicker paints? Don't worry, I got you covered. I figured that one out too. So check out this lavender multi-surface paint from Folk Art. It naturally comes a lot thicker than the Deco Art Americana. There's nothing wrong with it. But when you try to dot with it, your swooshes are going to be shorter, not going to flow as smoothly. It's probably not going to be as pointy. And you'll find that no matter how hard you try, they're not going to be very consistent. You can get used to it, you can practice, and you can make it work. Lord knows I did. And I regret it so much. I wasted so much time. I'm going to show you an easier way to make this paint work for you. I want to introduce y'all to Liquitex's Flow Aid Additive. You guys, I'm telling you, this stuff has saved so many of my paints that I look at and think, this will never dot. This will never swoosh. I add some of this to it, and I'm telling you, it fixes it. I love it so much. If you read the back, it says you can mix this product 20 parts water to 1 part of this Flow Aid additive. Okay, that means we are really stretching the dollar on this product, and it's gonna last a long time. So I ordered some cute little dropper bottles. I stole the label from the Flow Aid and put on there, and I keep on my desk a pre-mixed bottle of this Flow Aid. It's already mixed 20 parts water to 1 part Flow Aid. What this product does for me, one, it thins the paint out and it's gonna make it look more like that fresh Deco Art texture or that runny egg yolk that I'm looking for, but it also does a little something else. Like the name of the product suggests, it helps the paint flow better. If you've ever had your paint stick to your dotting tool and get real blobby and you're like, oh, I want it just come off, and it drives you crazy, this is the product you need to fix that. It's gonna make the right consistency where it literally just flows right off your dotting tool, right on your surface, and it is so much better. Now, I could talk about how wonderful I think this product is all day long, but I think it would be best if I show you. Let me first show you how I mix the consistency to get it exactly like I want it. I'm gonna try to get it just like that Deco Art Americana. Let's see if we can do it. I almost always start out with about 10 drops of the Flow Aid to 1 well of paint. I'm gonna stir it in. I'm gonna be super gentle and try really hard not to add any bubbles to it. If you get bubbles, that's okay. I always do. I'll show you here in a second how I deal with those. All right, let's get this mixed up, and then we're gonna compare it to that Deco Art Americana, and we're gonna either add more paint or we're gonna add more Flow Aid until we get the consistency we know is gonna make the perfect swoosh. Let's get in there and check this out. I'm gonna dunk these stir sticks in the paint, and what I'm doing is I'm watching the little peak that's left behind, and I'm trying to see how fast that disappears. And then I'm gonna come over to this lavender paint and see if I can make it disappear that fast. Well, already I can tell that it's not going anywhere. So that tells me it's still a little too thick and we need to add some more Flow Aid. On the flip side, had I dipped that purple stick in there, pulled it away, and it dripped right off and no peak at all, I would have known to add a little bit more paint. Thicken it up a little bit. You're gonna go back and forth until you think it's perfect for you. Don't worry, with practice, you're probably gonna get to the point where you're gonna pull out that lavender paint and say, ah, yes, I remember you. And you're gonna know exactly what to do with it. It's gonna be second nature. I find myself already to where I know, hey, put 5 drops here, or that looks like it needs about 10 drops. You probably can do it in the kitchen when you're cooking. You know exactly how much salt to put on your food. It's kind of the same way. It's an additive. All right, this looks really good to me, except for all those bubbles. Y'all, I looked this up in the beginning on how to remove bubbles, and everyone said, just pop them. Take out your smallest stylus or get a needle and just pop them. Well, that just did not work for me. Sometimes maybe, but not always. Let me show you what I do. I literally just flick them out of there. I put my fingers in the middle of my palette and my thumb on the edge, and I flick it. I put my hand up on the side just to be sure nothing splatters on my artwork, and I give it a little flick. That gets out probably 90% to 100% of the bubbles. I love this little trick. It works great. Now, if that doesn't work or it doesn't get all of my bubbles, I will take my artist torch and give it a super fast swipe across it, and that will pop everything else. All right, now let's see if we can tell the difference. I'll squirt out another little bit of this lavender paint, and we're gonna try to make those swooshes with it before and after the additive. Let me show you what this product actually does. I can already see that these swooshes are a little bit shorter than the ones that I was making with the Deco Art Americana. If I was painting a mandala and trying to make all of the swooshes the same size and I'd swapped paint, that would drive me crazy. So let's see what happens to our swoosh with the Flow Aid. Look. All right, isn't that super cool? I'm sorry, I know, I'm a dork. It totally is cool to me. I admit I exaggerated the tail just a little bit to prove my point, but if I'm gonna do the same swoosh I did with the Deco Art, watch this. You're gonna get the same size every time, and it's gonna be consistent. Okay, y'all, but there's more to it. What if I put more paint on my stylus? What happens then? I'm gonna be using the same paint that we thinned with the Flow Aid, but I'm gonna use a lot more paint. I'm literally dipping it out and putting it on my paper. Watch what happens. Whoa, that's a big thick swoosh. Now I'm gonna put less and less paint on this very same 2mm stylus, and I want you to notice how the swooshes change. If you've ever watched a tutorial and you see the person doing a swoosh with a 2mm stylus, then you do one at home and it's twice as big or twice as small, and you're like, what just happened there? This is what happened. You're either using way too much paint or way little paint, or maybe they are. 6 or a half dozen, you gotta be consistent. I'm telling you, it is the whole theme of this video is being consistent. You need to use the same amount of paint. You need to do the same consistency, the same pressure, the same speed. I could go on, but I digress. The next thing I want to show you is what I'm going to call a double dip swoosh. That's when you do a swoosh and you feel like, oh no, it's not long enough. Oh no, it's not big enough. Oh no, it's wobbly. Well, you just double dip. I know this isn't making any sense. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm still sticking with my 2mm tool, and I'm gonna put a bunch of paint out here on my paper because I wanna make a really big swoosh. All right, so I've used my stylus to dip out a good bit of paint onto my paper. And now I'm gonna try to keep the bead of paint in front of that stylus so I can push it on out. I'll keep coming back, getting more paint, and I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep doing this as long as I want my swoosh. And then I'm gonna come back in and double dip and clean up those edges. Now this is something I've just started doing. This is not a normal way to make a swoosh, but it is super fun. So I thought I would include it, but don't worry, we're gonna make swooshes just like everybody else too. But this makes a really long, fun swoosh. I'm just gonna keep moving the paint around until I get the big swoosh that I'm looking for. I'm gonna tell y'all this isn't the most consistent way to make large swooshes, but it's gonna get you in a pinch if you don't have dotting rods. So I wanna show you a more consistent way to make swooshes and swipes and teardrops and petals, all of the shapes that require a dot, and then you drag the paint out into points. Today, I'm gonna use a dotting rod. I'm gonna use 8mm. They come in all different sizes, but I'm gonna use 8mm. The bigger the dotting rod, the bigger the swoosh. The smaller, the smaller. So I'm gonna go middle of the road and pick an 8mm dotting rod, and I'm gonna place a dot on my page just like you would any old dot. Now I'm gonna try to make what I call a petal, which means I'm gonna need a little bit extra paint. So I might place a little bit more paint on there. Now I'm gonna grab my smallest dotting tool. It is a 0.8 mm tool. It's the smallest one I have, but I happen to know they make them even smaller. Now I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna start in the middle of the paint, right here. I'm gonna drag it all the way up to wherever I want it. I'm gonna keep dragging that paint until I get it as long as I want it. I'm trying to reach that line. All right, and then I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna grab some more paint out of that dot, and I'm just gonna drag it to where it needs to be. Y'all, this is one of the most satisfying things that I think I do when I'm dotting. I don't know what it is about playing in the paint. Maybe it makes me feel like a little kid playing in the mud. I don't know, but it is so relaxing. You're just gonna move that paint and sculpt it right exactly where you want it. Now I'm gonna make a double-ended one. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of paint and I'm gonna do it on the bottom too. These make beautiful shapes. I love using them in my mandalas. But I'm not gonna grab a whole lot of paint because I don't want it as long as the one up there. Check this out. Oh, y'all, isn't that just the prettiest shape? It looks so beautiful in my mandalas. Now I want to show you a teardrop that's the same shape without that bottom pointy thing. And I'm going to use a little bit different tools just to show you the difference. I'll use my other 8mm rod, and I'm going to take my small stylus and I am going to bump it up to 1.5. Let me show you what happens. Using this bigger dotting tool makes a wonderful point. But when you come back in and you start sculpting your teardrop down to that point, you'll find out why I use a smaller one. It actually makes the tip even bigger. Watch, when I get down to the bottom, it's like, uh-oh. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get this ball to make that point? Y'all, I'm just not. Maybe you can with lots and lots of practice, but me, I always go back to my tiny little tool and I just put it where I want it and I make it pointier. I hope that made sense. Now, hopefully I have gone over all of the basics on how to make these shapes where you're dragging the paint around your surface. Now let's play with it just a little bit, like putting swooshes around our dots and all of the things that I think are just fun. Let's do it. I'm gonna speed this part up just a little bit. Here's how you slow it down if you want to continue watching it in real time. Now, as I go through and show you all the things I can think of to do with the shapes I just showed you, I'm also going to throw up some labels on what I call these shapes. I remember when I first started, oh my goodness, you guys, I could not figure out the difference between a swoosh and a swipe. Then throw in comma stroke and petal and teardrop, and I was like, What? Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna label them, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about why I call each shape what I call them. So here we go. All right, this is what I call a swoosh. Anytime you have this shape and it makes a curve, I call it a swoosh. I don't care if you're making it with the dotting rod and stylus or just the stylus. If it's got a curve in it, I call it a swoosh. So what's a swipe? Well, I say anytime you're using a dotting tool or a stylus and you make a single motion in a straight line, I'm calling that a swipe. So if you're only using one tool and it's a straight motion, no curve, I'm calling them swipes. So if it's got a curve in it, it's a swoosh. If it's straight across, I'm calling it a swipe. But what if you use two different dotting tools to make a swipe? Well, that's when I'm calling it a teardrop. If the motion is straight across and you're using more than one tool to make it, I call it a teardrop. I don't care if you're using a stylus. I don't care if you're using dotting rods and a stylus. I call it a teardrop. So then that might leave you wondering, what's a comma stroke? Y'all, it's anything that looks like a comma. I believe that a swoosh and a comma stroke are the same thing. So now you know what I call a swoosh, a teardrop, a swipe, a comma stroke. But what's a petal? Y'all, it is just a teardrop with a double-ended side, just like this. All right, everyone, I really hope you got something out of this. I hope you found an answer that you've been searching for. If not, do leave me a comment. I read everyone and I answer them. Let me know your questions. I want to answer them. I'm telling you, it was so frustrating trying to figure this out on my own. I don't want you to have to do that. I want you to remember to be consistent, use good paint consistency, experiment, and practice, 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 practice. At the end of the day, practice is going to be your key. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I want you to subscribe, like the video, share it with all of your friends, and I want you to come back here next week and watch another video. Until next time, rock on.